What's up, my little turtle doves? Thralls of Metal back again for another excellent album review. I am Shredlord.
McCrack Nick.
And we are here to bring to you the new Ruins of Beverast. Came out on Von Records 2021, and the album name is...
The Thule of Grimoires, which probably has some deeper poetic meaning, but I didn't look it up, so it's just creepy sounding. It's been formed in 2003 in Germany, and this is a one-man band, or at least in the studio it's a one-man band. It took him a while to actually get a live band. Actually, he had like at least 3 releases out before he actually got a live band, I believe.
Did not know this.
The main guy behind this, Alexander von Meilenwald, literally plays every single thing on this, and pretty much that is across the board on all their albums. This is their 6th full length, and this band started off as more of a atmospheric black metal band and has slowly over time started incorporating lots of elements of doom and I guess you could call avant-garde music.
I would definitely say avant-garde.
Yeah.
I've never heard of these guys before. But my immediate takeaway is these guys are not afraid to experiment,
No.
and this album is evidence of that.
And fun fact, the word Beverast is actually a play on words by Alexander for the word Bifrost, which of course is the bridge between Midgard and Asgard, and I guess that's a whole,
Deeper meaning
there, getting away from gods, kind of broken the bridge, something like that. I don't know. It's a pretty cool name though, I know that. So this is a very long album. This is over an hour and 9 minutes.
Packed into 7 songs.
7 songs. So you get very long songs. In fact, the first 2 songs are both over 10 minutes, but you get a lot of interesting movements and production throughout. This album loves layering and lots of reverb. Like, this sounds like it was recorded in a cavern lit only by candles and filled with shrouded figures, probably getting ready to sacrifice
druids.
Someone.
Please,
maybe
druids.
I don't know.
Definitely druids.
There might be like skull masks. Who knows? Wasn't like the cool party you'd see at Eyes Wide Shut, definitely. But this was still a really cool sort of feel to this album. It's very dark and foreboding. Opening track, Ropes into Eden.
Sounds kinky.
And right away you get this kind of like droning sort of delay on the guitar, and it kind of just keeps building. There's like staticky little spoken word bits in there before just breaking into blast beats and, tremolo riffs. But the interesting thing about this is the guitars don't scream black metal.
A lot of the black metal elements are buried under the keys. The keys are a very prominent instrument on this album, and I would say they are the most important. If you took away the keys to this album, you would take away way too much. So I think this album relies on a lot of the keys for ambience, for movement. I did find that the guitars were pushed way, way back, and a lot of the drum stuff too, especially in the beginning. As the album came through though, they would let the guitars come through more, and I find myself getting into more of those parts just because I know it was on purpose. I'm a guitarist, yeah. And I know it was meant to do that, but yeah, I found it caught my ear more when I at least had it in a more desirable, because when I say it was low, it was low. I'm not nitpicking.
It has a low tone. Like, they're down-tuned, they're very distorted, and they sound more like doom metal guitars, which doom metal is a big part of this. In fact, you get giant, like,
huge
funeral doom parts, like dirges. Like, this is moving at the pace of, like, cold molasses rolling down a slide. It's slow. But the doom sound of the guitars, like when it gets down to those like death metal tremolos or the black metal tremolos, it kind of just sounds like this steady drone. And yeah, you can get that effect by just doing like the just big booming single notes and chords. But when it's like drone, it's just kind of this layer of almost static. So it's what they kind of build on top of that. But what you get on top of these droning guitars is like clean melodies and kind of like, I don't know, like goth rock and industrial elements. I've heard a lot of comparisons to Dead Can Dance, but honestly, I've never really dove into their catalog. I know of them. I may have heard them, like playing in the background before, but I never like consciously listened to them, so I don't know if that's the right comparison. But I would go as far as like saying like the darker moments of The Cure, except much heavier with black metal.
I would say the vocals sound like Peter Steele sweetly laid down in beautiful ass coitus with Till Lindemann from Rammstein.
They're very chanty and almost always doubled.
Yes.
Like there's very few moments where the clean vocals don't have like I guess you could call it a harmony, because they're almost like spoken word.
Layered.
Like a
All
chant.
the vocals are layered. Yeah, I can't recall too many spots, period, where there's a single vocal line. Anytime a vocal appears, unless it's more of a spoken word thing,
Yeah.
it seems to be layered.
When they're harsh, it sounds like it might just be a single take, just drenched in reverb, because reverb's a giant part of this album. You have to have that big cavernous sound. But when it came down to anything clean, it definitely sounded like it was doubled most of the time. The first half of the album, or I guess you could say first half, I don't know, like the first 3 songs definitely had more black metal elements, but towards the middle of the album, it really started to like drop out in favor more doom. Mammothopolis, or what, Mammopolis?
Mammothpolis? Mammothpolis.
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 Whatever, that is a 100% made up fucking word. This is honestly one of the most different songs on the entire album. You get industrial drum loops in here, and honestly guitars aren't really a big thing until about the end of the track, where it kind of builds this big crescendo. The rest of it is sort of like droning synths. There's a pulsating synth that is kind of just going through it. Yeah. Fiercely 80s, but again, that dark, creepy 80s, like you should be smoking cloves in a dark room lit by maybe a single candle. That kind of creepy synth.
Now, the first 2 tracks were a little too obscure for me right away. The first song I really started to get into was Kremlik, Nell. The intro is kind of cool because it's carried in from the end of The Tundra Shines, and I like the progression that follows after that. And you start to hear, this is when in the album when you start to hear the guitars start to come up a little bit more, and the riffs are actually starting to carry these parts, and to me it gave these songs a lot more drive and a lot more direction. Yes, it's doomy and stuff like that, and it needs to drone, but it still needs to not feel like it's just caught in limbo somewhere. And I feel like the guitars a little bit higher in the mix helped push a lot of these sections, and then the album started to really pick up for me.
There's like a nice like double time like drum part that kind of kicks off the song after you get like a little bit of an intro, and it has again that kind of like goth rock but metal feel. Like, I mean, we just reviewed Tribulation not too long ago. Not quite that, because I think they don't have as much reverb on everything, but kind of similar. It kind of has that same feel. Like, it's deeply like oppressive and dark and spooky. And this song actually has like an interesting spot where I definitely picked up possibly 3 different guitar lines on it. Generally on every song, the backbone in terms of the guitars is a big droning riff of some kind. That's the kind he loves. But on this, you have these really cool, like, I guess like delayed cleans. They're kind of like dreamy, ethereal, that kind of thing. And then you also have this big doomy lead melody that's there too. And all these 3 blend together really well and just create this really just cool mood right in this spot. And towards the end you get this weird like Pete Steele crooning, but I think some of those vocals actually really worked there. There were some spots where he wasn't doubled, and he actually kind of pushed his register up a little bit versus just staying down here. That's pretty much the bulk of the cleans there, but it actually had a spot where it stood out a bit there.
So after Mammothpolis, the song Anchorus in Furs is really cool. It starts off immediately with this excellent guitar riff, and I think
female vocals.
Yeah, and this is another turning point too, because now the riffs feel like they're becoming more prominent. The guitars have been pushed up in the mix now we're getting more riffs. So songs like Anchorus and Furs, and then the next one behind it, Polar Hiss Hysteria.
The black metal comes back.
Yes, yeah, the blast beats are back. This is kind of the black metal we want, and then a lead? Yeah. They throw in a lead.
And it's really good. It's like a tasty, just, not technical, but very melodic, and has a very different feel. Like, it just screams, I'm not a sullen, depressed person for just 1 second. Like, they kind of wanted to be a little bit more epic. Anchorus also has some really cool tribal rhythms, too. And there's a lot of cool, like, tribal breaks. And I like kind of how they build. And there's, like, moments where they kind of, move from a tribal rhythm to, like, a marching snare. And it kind of just builds tension. And that's another thing this album is really good at. It builds tension well into the next part. You don't know what that next part's going to be, though. Generally, it could take a flip to slow funeral doom, or you just going right headfirst into black metal once again. But I like the fact that towards the end of the album, they picked up the pace because the middle was a little bit slow.
Now, the last track would not be on this album if it wasn't 14 minutes long and some odd seconds. However, but this is a very good track. It's called Deserts to Bind and Defeat, and it starts off with a very slow build-up. However, that's to be expected on this album. But by the time it does build up, it starts getting really, really epic. And this whole song kind of puts in all of the influences of this album, in my opinion, in a perfect blend. This is a yin-yang blend for me. Even though it is long, it definitely held my attention.
I like the dramatic flips on that song. Like, you can go, again, from, like, Funeral Doom, like, all of a sudden you're listening to, you know, Esoteric or Ahab, and then all of a sudden into, like, very melodic black metal, like Dissection. And those dramatic flips, in terms of how they did that, I just thought was absolutely amazing. And this song is really intense. Like, it has great peaks and valleys throughout. This is a really cool way to close the album. Now, there's a little bit of, like, droning noise towards the end, but you've already sat through enough droning noise on this too. It's always present. There's always layers. And sometimes that was kind of an issue. Tundra Shrines, there's a part where there is like a constant or something like that. And I was like, okay, you could have stripped that part out.
We get it.
But for the most part, this was a super engaging listen. This is just sort of nuts in terms of all the different elements. And the fact that this was one person, I get why there was a 4-year break between albums. It probably took a lot to really construct all this. Overall, I'm going to give this 4 stars. This is, I don't know if a banger is the right word. I mean, it has definitely like metal
I couldn't call
moments.
it a banger because of its tempo.
It's absorbing. Like, you really get drawn into it. You know, the atmosphere is the main thing. Like, it's dark, it's foreboding, and it just has like a really great feel. The vocals are really dynamic in terms of their shifts. Like, there's a lot of dynamics on this just in terms of style and such. This is the first one from this band I've actually sat down and listened to the entire thing, and I'm gonna have to go back and listen to more of it because this is a really just engaging, strange listen, and I liked it. So yeah, definitely check it out.
I would say that this is normally an album that I would not finding myself listen to, although I did enjoy it. It had elements of 2 genres of music that I definitely enjoy. And while it may not have been the blend I usually prefer, it actually was very clever in how it was produced and very clever in how it was written. And it was a very well thought out and well composed album. The only thing that I might personally critique, besides just in the taste farm, is sometimes some of the ambience felt a little like Halloween sound effects in the background, you know, like the music you play in the bushes when the kids come up and get candy.
Then you jump out and scare the shit out of those fuckers.
You do jump out and scare the shit out of those fuckers, but other than that, man, this album was actually really cool and interesting to listen to, so I'll say 3.5.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. If you are new to the channel, subscribe because we do stuff like this all the time. And we have a giveaway going on. Once we hit 4,500 subs, we have a stack of 3 CDs and a vinyl we're going to give away. So definitely get in on that. There should be a video playing automatically as soon as you go to our channel. And if not, there will be a link below in the description. So definitely get in on that. And with that, we will bid you adieu.